Welcome back to another sculpting video. I am Brianna, or Clayleaf Creations, and if you're new here, I'm a sculptor, and every month I take you guys on a journey through my sculpting process and provide tips and tricks to help you on your own journey. I'm constantly trying to improve and develop my skills, so thank you for joining the adventure with me. For this project, I really wanted to make a Seahorse Dragon. Yes, a Seahorse Dragon, not a sea dragon, which is an actual living creature. I love adding fantasy into my designs, and this one is no exception. I had these cool globe hangers, and it was the perfect shape, so I used it as my armature base. From the start, I knew I wanted to make a pregnancy horse and celebrate fatherhood, which I don't think is something usually depicted in seahorse art. So you can kind of see me here making my armature and tying it to the base wire to create the illusion of the pregnancy belly, which will fill up with tinfoil. So whenever using any kind of clay, you want to make sure you're building up the armature very strong so that it can withhold the weight of the clay, and also use foil or wood or cardboard to help you create that mass that you need without wasting all of your clay, since clay is pretty expensive. To ensure the tinfoil doesn't lift up, you can use tape, like masking tape or tinfoil tape. You can also use a less expensive clay to cover it and give yourself a smoother surface area to work with. In previous videos, I mentioned not adding hot glue for anything you're putting in the oven, but I want to say, I lied. I totally thought you couldn't, but you so can use hot glue for keeping your tinfoil together. The main concern is the fact that the oven will melt the glue. If you cover it completely with clay, it will actually create a better adhesive as it melts between the foil and keeps it all together once it cools. Anything that is not covered, however, will melt and ooze everywhere, so always make sure that there aren't any glued areas that are exposed. And whenever you're using the glue, please use gloves. I burnt the heck out of myself like 4 million times, so please be careful when using any kind of hot products or soldering irons or anything like that. So yeah, just be cautious. Here I'm prepping the seahorse for some horns, so just grabbing some wire and putting some hot glue on there. And then as I was playing around with it, I actually really liked some seashells that I purchased last year, and I decided instead of going with the horns, I would actually do the seashell horns. So later on you'll see the seahorse without those placeholders. Another thing to mention about having armature is that when you're using your tinfoil, make sure it's really tight and not loose, because if you create air pockets, that will actually kind of poke through the clay and create bubbles or actually make your clay crack. So be very careful, make sure that it's completely solid and there's no like movable areas that could create those air bubbles. Now on to the fun part, adding clay. For this project, I used cosclay medium firm blend. I just really like the texture of it. It holds details well and is smooth to apply, besides it being naturally flexible. The regular one for me is too soft and far more sticky than I like. I haven't used extra firm, but I assume it would just be a little stiffer and hold details even better. Some artists mix firm Fimo clay with cosclay to create a new texture and firmness as well, so whatever suits you. Just keep in mind the more you mix cosclay with another polymer clay, the less flexible it will become, so definitely do some flex tests. Adding clay is pretty self-explanatory, so I want to take a moment to thank you for watching the video. And if you like the content and want to see more, like, subscribe, leave a comment. I appreciate the interaction so much. As an artist and content creator, I thrive on the communication and community building we make. You can also support me on Patreon, where you can get some behind-the-scenes content, sneak peeks about future projects, giveaways, raffles, and soon I'll be creating more. I'm still relatively new over there, so would appreciate the support so I can keep creating content and sculptures for you guys. I'm also on Instagram and have my own shop website. All links are in the description for your ease of access. Materials will also be listed there. Thank you to my patrons Grace Slick, Christy No Weird Areas, Jenny DeView, and a special thanks to Stephanie as a paid subscriber. Your support means the world. Now, back to the video. A little pro tip for you. You can use a pasta machine to create nice sheets of clay. With cosclay, however, it does tend to stick to the pasta machine. So to actually get those thin layers that you're looking for, you're going to have to put a little bit of that clay between like parchment paper and then pull it through slowly through your machine. Otherwise, you'll end up with a gunky mess inside your machine. I've messed up my machine before that way. Once I added all the clay to the sculpture, I did bake it. So one thing with polymer clay is you can bake it multiple times. You don't have to do everything in one bake. And doing this actually helps you save your progress. So here I was, after I baked the first part of it, I was trying to decide what I wanted to do on the tail and the rest of the body with the scales. So I'm just kind of trying out a couple different things, and it took me 3 tries before I figured out what exactly I wanted to do. So here's a little bit of my process of just trial and error, and you can see that. When looking at a seahorse, many of the tiny spikes on their body, and it almost looks like a grid-like pattern with dips between them. I wasn't sure how to do this at first, so this was mostly an experiment and it turned out well, though it took a bit of time. Basically, roll out long lines of clay to go vertically on the body, and then smaller ones to go horizontally, and then pinch it a little bit where they join up. Then it's a matter of blending into the lines of the sculpture so that they aren't so rigid. Oh, and when adding uncured clay to cured clay, you'll want to use a bacon bond to coat the sculpture and make it tacky so the uncured clay can grip it. Mine was extremely hard, so I messed with it a little bit and added some softener, and it created a nice consistency to spread over the area needed. Now to really bring this to life, I used a ball tool and pressed it in the center of each square, slowly pushing the clay out towards the lines to create a dip. With the side mostly done, it's time to switch and start doing the spikes on the back. And now to do the back fin. I usually just create a shape in the clay or press it flat and then drag a soft tool through it to make the wavy fins. In hindsight, I should have created a support for it, but this worked out and some of the bacon bond with a little extra clay worked out just fine. Don't forget to texture the back, and I use the same method to create the fins you'll see later on the arms and on the head. Seahorses generally don't have side fins, but our little dragon does. before I bake it again for its second bake, I am going back through with a little bit of alcohol just to kind of make sure I don't have any more of those fingerprints and all the lines are smooth together where I was pushing clay around, just so that there's a nice smooth finish. Here we are after the second bake, and now it's time to finish off the features of the face and then the final fins, and then we're going to end up gluing the seashells, which I did off camera, with some super glue. And he's all baked and done. Now to airbrushing. I first layered down a white coat to get everything a nice base before going in with a goldish color. Then I went back over with a red and purple hue from the fins inward to get a nice transitioning effect. Make sure you're in a good ventilated area or have a face mask on and have things protected from the spray of the airbrush. You don't want to breathe in those paint particles. So yes, I am wearing a face mask, though I should also be wearing gloves, but I usually forego that when painting. Once it's dry, I go back in with a wash technique, which is a little bit more water to the paint to darken some of those lines and then wipe away the excess. Oh, also, test your airbrush and all your paints before you use it on a piece. Not all paints work with polymer clay, and one paint that works great for Fimo may not work great for cosclay. It can leave a tacky feel or not dry completely. I usually use FolkArt acrylics when I'm just hand painting, and I'll be trying to water that down a little bit for the airbrush as well. And then here I am glossing it, and I am using a paint-on varnish because, again, spray varnishes do not work well with polymer clay. And always test anything before you put it on your actual piece. And here is his final photos. What do you think of this father-to-be? What would you like to see next? Constructive feedback on how to make these videos better is always welcome. I do have another water project in mind, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next sculpting adventure.